In my hands, I have the new Sony 70-200 f2.8 G Master version 2. I've been fortunate enough to use this for the last couple of weeks, and in this video, I'm gonna share some behind the scenes footage from some of my recent studio portrait sessions. What's new? Is it better than version 1 of the lens? I'm gonna show you some close-up, unretouched results so that you could judge for yourself. Welcome to my channel. If it's your first time here, I teach practical tips that you can use to improve your photography, along with gear reviews and more. So if you're into that type of thing, consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps out. Let's get right into it with the first studio session that I did using this lens with Anna Grace. You've seen her on the channel before. I'll link her profile in the description of this video for you to check out her other work, as well as the rest of the models who appear in this video. They're all awesome, so head over afterwards and give them a follow. I've always been a big fan of using 70-200mm lenses for studio portraiture, but oftentimes I'd avoid using them because they're just too darn heavy to hold for long periods of time. A typical studio shoot for me could be 2 hours or more, and any time that I'd have the option to handhold a lens, I'd usually always reach for a prime lens that was a little bit lighter. With this new Sony 70-200 lens, I started out the shoot the way that I typically would shoot using a lens like this, and I used it on a tripod. I wanted to get a bit of a sense of how the lens would perform in terms of autofocus speed and accuracy, as well as checking out the image quality. The first setup was a one light setup using a ProPhoto D2 strobe inside of a giant Westcott Zeppelin modifier. For some of the shots, I pulled in a silver reflector for those close-up shots that I really love to shoot. You'll notice in the behind the scenes video that there's also a third light, which was a video light that wasn't impacting the lighting for the actual images that I was taking. If you want to learn more about that, I uploaded a really funny video, or at least I think it's funny, a few days ago that I'll link in the cards above. For the background, I used a Savage True Blue Seamless paper, which I thought matched up really nicely with her outfit. For my camera, I used the Sony Alpha 1, mainly because I wanted to see if this new lens could keep up with the best performing Sony camera on the market. You figure if it does well with this camera, then it should work great with their other cameras like the Alpha 7R4, the 7 III, etc., etc. Hopping over to Capture One, we'll pixel peep a few of the images so that you can get an idea of the results of the setup and get a closer look at the image quality and the sharpness. These are raw photos straight out of camera with no adjustments made. These aren't the final images that will get posted on social media and delivered to the model, but it gives you an idea of what the results actually look like without any kind of post-processing. You'll notice right away as I zoom into some of these photos that this lens is very sharp. Typically I would choose prime lenses when I wanted sharp images, and the results that I'm seeing here from this new 70-200, it rivals what I would expect to see from some of my favorite Sony primes like the 135GM and the 50GM. If you want to see a head-to-head comparison with those or any other lenses, let me know in the comments and I'll work on that in a future video. So far with the first look, I'm really happy with how these turned out, but I really didn't get to experience what the handling of the lens was actually like since I had it on a tripod. While Anna Grace changed for the second look, I switched up my background to this tulip-colored seamless background from Savage. I kept the lighting setup the same, but this time I opted to handhold the lens so that I could see how it actually performed. With this new 70-200 being almost 30% lighter than version 1 of the lens, on paper it doesn't seem like a massive difference in weight, but I can tell you that in use, that it made a huge difference. It was something about how the lens optics are balanced within the lens that make hand-holding this lens feel really good. I didn't feel at any point during this session that I wanted to reach for a lighter lens. And of course, once I pixel peeped a few images and saw how sharp they were, I was pretty much convinced. Looking at some of the results from that second look using Capture One, we could see again that the colors look awesome, and there's lots of detail in these images. I mentioned for the first look that the images were raw. So this look, I wanted to show you some side-by-side comparisons of what the raw image looks like versus the fully retouched version that I would deliver to the client and that I would post on social media. If you start off with a quality shot straight out of camera, then there's really very little work that you have to do in Photoshop. Over the course of 2 weeks, I did 3 more photo shoots, 2 in studio and 1 outdoors so that I could see what the bokeh was like when shooting wide open. Here are the retouched results that I got with the other 3 models, Che, Brianna, and Gabriella. Starting off with Che's shoot, I was really happy yet again with how this lens performed. It not only gave me the sharp results that I wanted to see in my portrait work, but it really was a joy to use. The colors look as you'd expect from a high-end lens like this. I even took a few photos using the same setup with the Sony 135mm G Master lens, and you could see that it competes really well with what was my favorite and what's been my favorite portrait lens this Sony has made to date. I would dare say, as I zoom in on the lips in these 2 shots, the 70-200 has a little bit more detail. There could be several factors that led to that, so I'll have to investigate this a little bit further in another video. The takeaway I had so far from 2 studio sessions was that this could be the one and done lens if you're into shooting this style of work. You could literally do everything with this lens, from close-up shots to full body shots and pretty much everything in between, and you're able to do it without having to visit the chiropractor every week. Moving on to the shoot with Gabriella, I took the lens outdoors and shot every single shot at f2.8 wide open so that you could see the sharpness and the bokeh. Because this lens has 11 aperture blades, you get more of a circular shape to the bokeh towards the center of the lens. With this being a 70-200mm lens, you also get some really gorgeous compression as well when you're shooting in that 100mm range or higher. Zooming into the face on these shots, you could see that while the bokeh looks really nice, you're still getting amazingly sharp results. For my shoot with Brianna, I'm back in the studio and I wanted to try shooting at different apertures than before. I took these portraits at higher f-stops, starting from f10 and going all the way up to f18 so that I could test out the autofocus performance and the sharpness at those higher f-stops. The new 70-200 did a great job tracking at all of these apertures, which we'll see here in a moment. I also took a few shots with the 135 G Master again so that we can compare the results. And this time around, it seems that the 135 shot was just a little bit sharper. But that really is to be expected when you're comparing a telephoto and a prime lens. That's because prime lenses are typically sharper, with the downside being that you can only shoot at whatever focal length it is that the lens offers you. Again, I'll have to test this out a little bit further, but so far the new 70-200 version 2 is standing up really, really well to the king of portrait lenses, in my opinion, the 135 G Master. So who is this lens for? If you're someone who owns one of the newer Sony bodies like the Alpha 9, 7R4, or the Alpha 1, and you don't currently own a 70-200, then this lens is one that I'd put at the top of the list to pick up. With the newer motors and the enhanced optics, it's going to give you amazing results. If you own version 1 of the 70-200 and you have any of the newer cameras, then I would definitely look a little closer at this new lens, especially if you're using it on the Alpha 1. With the Alpha 1 doing 120 autofocus calculations per second, you need a lens with motors that are fast enough to keep up with it, and that's exactly what you're going to get with this new 70-200. If you own some of the earlier 7 series cameras, then you'll probably land a great deal on version 1 of the 70-200 in the coming weeks, and the lens will still be one of the best that you can use. Just like I mentioned in my video a few months ago at this point, where I discussed the best Sony portrait lenses available, the original 70-200 was in my top 5, and it still gives world-class results. I'll link that video for you in the description, but it looks like I'll be updating that list very soon. I'm getting ready to do some more tests with this lens, so if there's any specific comparisons that you want to see, let me know in the comments section below. And while you're there, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, And if you want to learn more about portrait photography, check out the video that you see here on the screen. I'll see you there.